You know what I noticed? I noticed that every single ancient people and their structures and their messages have all been studied to all say the same thing. Look within for God. Look within for everything. But when we, in today's world, look within, we find terror, mostly because of the rejection model of being parented. Because to a child, that's incredibly traumatic to introduce the opposite of what its spiritual nature is. And in reaction, we react that lowers our self-worth. And we believe in this low self-worth, which develops its own secondary wisdom, which was the intent. So now the inner voice comes in. It's not just silence anymore speaking to the heart's mind of the child. It is the second wisdom speaking from what truth spoke to the child emotionally. Because truth speaks to us emotionally as a result of experiencing new things. And left without the second wisdom, we wouldn't have the challenges we have. But we do. It comes in after feeling rejected for naturally expressing the innermost emotional truth of the inner self, as children do naturally, and we call that innocence and fall in love with that. The second wisdom comes in to say, look, they're rejecting you. You must then, therefore, must be unworthy. But we don't, at that age, we don't realize that it's a secondary voice and not the voice of the life source, and it's confusing to the child. So what does a child do? We're curious when we're young, so we look and see that there's pain relief there. So in that pain relief, we ask that second wisdom, how is there pain relief from feeling this trauma of emotional rejection of my heart? And the second wisdom comes in and says, lie about how you're feeling, and then they can't reject you. They can't reject what you don't say. And we listen to that, and we realize that this fucking lying thing is a savior. And so is the one who brought the information, the savior from the pain. That's all the child sees. That's all you saw. That's all I saw. And it was a relief. And we began worshiping the second wisdom's ability to kill the truth off. And we didn't realize what we were doing. We just saw the safety from the potential trauma coming. And it wasn't potential. It was coming. Because parents are not the balanced, determined selves before they become parents. I know this because I went through that. And now I'm trying to clean that up with my 32-year-old son, I think he is. Very difficult to clean up the mess from the rejection model. My rejection model was like yours. The emotional structure in myself I feared. So when I saw my son feeling what I feared, I gave him a self-protection behavior because I was afraid of what I saw coming, which was from my experience and not the current child's experience. So I thought I was arming him with great strength, but what I actually did was kill his higher self off by telling him to be afraid of this, that, and the other thing, and make sure you do this, that, and the other thing to self-protection behavior, right? Other than that, I get lost when I start rambling, so it's not rambling, it's true to identity of the truth. So that's great, but I forget the point most times. In every human being, first of all, there's a masculine and feminine element inside a single physical human being. But there's also three beings in spiritual influence with two elements each inside them, masculine and feminine. The omnipresent God, truth and logic. The Son of God, intellectual wisdom of that truth and logic, and the darkness element, which is guaranteed for all people, not for now, because we all go through this rejection model and then get bombarded by rejection's influence all our lives. Bombarded also to go to addiction when things are emotional, happy or sad. We're programmed on TV to go to alcohol to celebrate or to feel sad. When in darkened emotional moments, we see in the actors who reach for a drink when they're sad or reach for a drink when they're happy. Interesting concept. Remember how smoking used to do the same thing, but they caught on to it and haven't really let it back on, kind of, because it's unpopular with you. You don't like it. So guess what that is? That's them obeying you anyway. That's them obeying you. If you took, once you know yourself well enough, you're going to look at the other person's behavior in their second wisdom and realize they need your permission or they're not going to fucking act. That's real. But the end result of that, which is peace on this earth, begins in yourself healing you. Don't worry about saving the fucking world. Only God can do such a thing. Not you, not me. We can just learn how to be centered with God if you want to keep your first wisdom. That's it. Anyway, those other influences, right, make up the 666 thing. And so if you remain in those elements and not to do anything and listen to the second wisdom's influence over the first two influences of truth, emotional response, it's wisdom, all feminine, entering into the masculine, intellectual logic. If you remain there, then the second wisdom controls you in the self-defeating, self-destruction shit that goes through a person and then acts on that. But if you take it, all that information, the information that's given of the higher and lower self that's created there in the influence in any moment, and become the number 7, which is taking, translating the entirety of the circumstances through the goodness element of the first wisdom, which means take nothing in terms of self-protect, take it nothing, give everything. Now, I refused to be phony, so I remember refusing to do that when it was needed, and I don't feel bad about that. My gut tells me everything, and I believe the other person has to put their thing into it too. After the first empathy, you give them it. Anyway, as for this numbering thing, I don't understand numbers very good at all. I was tested. I got a grade 5 math level, but these numbers seem to be jumping out at me for this specific reasons. I know that, so that's why I'm saying it. Anything that jumps out at me means I gotta say it. It doesn't matter here or in a personal moment. It's all those personal moments that bring me to this point now where it's safe enough, feeling safe enough inside myself. Again, last time I did that, I was 4 or 5 years old, I remember. I also remember when I told it no more, when I told my birthing element, no more, I can't deal with this, and she died. That was my feminine element being fed by the secondary spiritual element, which is intellectual wisdom. So that wisdom was feeding my wisdom, but I told her to fuck off. I didn't say it like that. I said, please stop, no more, I can't take this anymore. Just like you did when it became too much for you in your early childhood. We all do this, that's my point. That's the breaking point, and that's when we cut ourselves off from that silence that says, this is truth, this is your emotional response. I'm with you, don't worry. And we feel that in our hearts, or we used to, but we don't anymore. What we feel in our hearts is just the terrifying fears because we are that 666. We haven't taken it to the 7. The 7 is translating the moment's experience into a goodness element. And that doesn't mean stupid shit. That doesn't mean giving up something of yourself. something in yourself or something outside yourself. It doesn't. It means making sure that everybody has their needs met, and that means even, especially in conversation, it has nothing to do with what material gain you get. Be equal and be balanced and make sure everybody has their needs met in every moment. If you can do that, you're good with God. If you can't do that, take my training. Then you'll be good with God, meaning the only thing here is infection quality. He can't allow our secondary wisdom and its infection that infects us in our thinking, in our minds, into infecting his perfect realm of light. I know that makes sense to you, so that's the whole thing. Instead of wiping us off the planet and saying, fuck them, he's giving us opportunity to earn this, earn the clarity back from what was stolen from us, like a pedophile steals from a child a part of the child's inner self, to get the child to tell itself, oh, I better do that, or I won't get my need met, because that's exactly what happened to a child. I remember it well, and spoke about this a lot, about, we all did in developing this training program. And we've come to much clarity, and we're not afraid anymore to talk. Like I tell you, you don't have to do anything. I mean, you don't have to say anything from your past. But because I healed myself and I feel free, it's easy for me to talk about these things with anybody. I've been doing it for years, like especially the sexuality thing after being sexually abused as a child, right? It's not something I get on a soapbox and say, this is what is because of that. I don't do that, but in the moment when somebody obviously went through that same despicable, horrible, traumatic, spiritual, deadening thing to go through, to be sexualized by an adult, targeted by the adult, manipulated, because the physical pedophile does not want you to call him a rapist. He actually feels offended by that, and then says to itself, this is okay because it's up to the child. That child chose to have sex with it. That's how they reason it in their second wisdom, which develops a mistress wisdom. There's mistress wisdoms. I don't know what they were called in the Bible, but they were also specifically identified like that, but misled to believe it was something else. That's spiritual rape of the truth, by the way. All of our truths have been raped, and the children born in our hearts thought as the result of our spiritual copulations with God in the life source have been pedophiled in our hearts. The new understanding is a child to God. So when you fuck with somebody's understanding, you're fucking with the child of God. Who knew that? No one. We were put on survival. To me, the worst case scenario is the worst infected. Now that my heart isn't filled with hate anymore. If it was still filled with hate, I would want to not only fantasize about all kinds of evil things. Now it's not like that. I see him as a victim hurting you, of course, which pisses me off. But instead, I'll let him know what the fuck's going on. If he wants help, fine. I'll help that person. I don't care what you did. I'll help you. I understand there's a spiritual pedophile that you call the devil. It's not a devil. Its only power is pedophilic. In the cunning deception of emotional manipulation of human truth and trust, leveraged by the fear of loss of something specific to the emotional need and its physical safety element, all the while targeting your self-worth level to lower it just enough to then develop the puppet-puppeteer relationship dynamic between you, which means now the pedophile is manipulating the fear of potential loss in the heart of the child, which is that second wisdom that generates in the child saying, well, the wisdom says, and then it enters the heart of the person, and then that translates as coming out as the person. So the child says to itself, as the result of the second wisdom that spoke to its heart, now it's self, you see? The influence becomes self that way. the interception, the infection. That's how it happens. I forgot my point. Yeah, I forgot my point. Oh, begins that second wisdom dialogue. If I remember this clearly. If I told myself when I was just a young little boy, if I don't do that, I'm not going to get my needs met. I didn't say it like that. I just felt a tremendous loss, potential fear. I mean, the tremendous fear of a potential loss, you see? That's the trick, the cunning deception element, right? Again, I forgot my point. Yeah, I forgot it. The point is the tools and toolbox of the physical pedophile are the same thing inside the second wisdom that develops a wisdom that then talks to you. And then you decide which wisdom you enter into. Does it remain in the first or enter into the second and act that shit out, becoming that darkness, becoming that evil. Because wisdom spoke to your heart and you accepted it. Which is, we're all on automatic program to do so right now. It's programming that's controlling us, that's all. And because we're programmable, sunshine, guess what? We're reprogrammable. And we found the secret. We found out how to do that inside your heart about concerning yourself. So now, when you look into the mirror of self-worth, what looks back is something that registers and acknowledges not the higher than normal level of self-worth, just the normal level of self-worth. You return yourself back to what Jesus called returning to the child, but raw and programmable state, which you are now directing as the adult with the education of not only the evil that others put onto you and that you suffered throughout your life, but the second wisdom's infection that you got to deal with. And I forgot my point. Once you deal with it, then you're good. You're infection free, although you still have to reach into that self-protection lots of times when you're in the environment, because who knows this stuff, right? Nobody. This is like kindergarten education, but nobody knows it. Like, I didn't know it until just recently. I'm 53 years old right now. Anyway, gotta go.